Everyone wants to know,
Mhm.
do you believe that the SEC is still better than the Big Ten this year?
Yes, 1000%.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Social Club where everyone has a voice. I am your host, Jacob Hale, joined with me by Cam Saunders. Yeah, so first thing I want to say, I want to thank all of our supporters here. We were worried about Cam this last week, and we had a hard time finding him. But as you see, he's alive and well. And since he's alive and well, we can go ahead and have a very long interesting conversation about the SEC football here. But before we begin, go ahead and subscribe, like, share our stuff, comment down below, let us know your thoughts. Also, join our Discord. If you guys want to talk ball every single day, go ahead and join the Discord. Let us know what you think. Also, on Instagram, follow us on there where we post reels daily, try to get people's reaction, very active on there. So, if you have any thoughts, anything that you want to share with us, go ahead and let your thoughts be heard down there. This might be my favorite episode right here. Just recording and thinking about this. I want to start off by stating the obvious: is that the SEC is officially dead, and we did it, guys. We all did it together. It was us. It was you guys. The SEC is officially dead, and everything that we've seen the past week has shown every single thing about that. But I want to do more than just hear your thoughts about it. I want to go game by game. So I wrote down the scores in the game. We're going to go game for game through the SEC bowl games, and I want to hear your thoughts on these teams that have lost here. So let me go ahead.
Yep.
Here you go. This one's yours. Let me get my reading glasses for this one. Here we go. Okay. All right, let's start with my favorite win here. Let's start with Alabama versus Michigan.
Okay.
So Alabama lost to Michigan 13-19.
Yep.
One key note here to note about this game is that I can guarantee none of us know who the starting QB for Michigan is right now.
Okay.
And I can also guarantee that that dude who started for Michigan did not pass for more than 120 yards.
Okay.
I can guarantee that. So, Cameron, I'm very curious about this one because obviously you argued that Alabama was deserving of actually being in the playoffs,
Still do.
and now they lost to a 6-6 who was a 6-6 Michigan team. So I just want to get your thoughts, man. What do you think about Bama losing to Michigan here?
First of all, if you're so for anybody who thinking the SEC is down, for anything like that, we're gonna discuss that in a later time, and I explain why you're totally wrong, and that's a conversation for a different day. But I'm gonna address the point that's in front of me right now. Okay, so he asked me about these games. Let's go. All right, so 13 versus 19, Michigan. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Alabama has had struggles on the offense side of the ball all year, but when they clicking, they are easily a top 7 team in the nation when their offense is clicking when everything is going on. Obviously, they've been inconsistent the entire year, and it shows again during the bowl game when they have opts out, like opt outs and weather and all that stuff. And Michigan didn't do nothing crazy. If you watch the game, you will see that Michigan had the ball within the 20, started with the ball within the 20-yard line, the first 5 drives due to weather mistakes and inconsistency from Bama. And Bama still kept it to a one-score game. I don't care who played quarterback. I don't care who threw the ball. Alabama did show that they are a decent football team, like even with the mistakes that they had. Um, so with that, it is what it is, right? What I would say about the SEC and bowl games is nobody shows up during the SEC and bowl games. Like no team shows up, and the reason being is because the SEC produced the most draft picks every single year. So everybody is opting out. Nobody is playing in these so-called quote unquote meaningless bowl games because all the athletes are getting ready for the NFL, right? So that's that. These bowl games, these losses right here, the SEC really don't care about bowl games because in the SEC it's one standard, that's national championship or nothing. So when you look at these games like this, for people who thinking that these bowl games mean something, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. And everybody who's pay attention to SEC ball knows this, right? It does not. It does not mean not one thing.
All right. Wow. Starting off hot there. All right. I think there's some things I actually do agree with there. I would be hard pressed if either of us can name that actual bowl game that they both played in, because it's 1,000 of them for sure.
I just know it
There-
was in Tampa, Florida.
yeah, but what I will say about that is that it's again, you're talking about a team that had an argument that was the first team out of being in the playoffs, right? So regardless of what happened with that situation. Again, similar to the Florida State situation, is that you were a game away from being in the playoffs. We expect you to go out and dominate against a middle of the pack Big Ten team. That's just the fact of the matter is. And especially with a team like Alabama and the SEC in general, we're under this impression that they're the most talented. They always bring in the most draft picks and everything like that, and I don't disagree with that. My double down on that is that you have all these 4 stars and 5 stars, and you have more than a month to prepare and train for this one team. You should be able to put a better product on the field. It's not like a week before the game, everyone just decides to leave. It's like that as soon as the season ends, who you got and who you don't. And then from there, you should have the talent to at least match up with these teams and drive out a win, just the same as Michigan had no reason to win this bowl game. They weren't even close to getting to the playoffs, but yet they still made it a point to win that bowl game and have that momentum going into the offseason.
Oh, excuse me. All right, so I'm glad you said that, right?
Mhm.
So one thing I will knock the SEC about, and this is the only thing that I will knock the SEC about, is that they haven't adapted to the NIL era just yet, right? All the other conferences have adapted. They took initiative of it and they applied it to their everyday program life. The SEC did not, right? That is the only thing that's been hunting the SEC the last 2 years is that they haven't adapted to the NIL era, right? In the past, there was backups on the SEC teams that was first round draft picks, Heisman runners, so on and so forth, right? With the NIL era now that these 4 and 5 star recruits are getting paid, they don't want to go to a big time SEC team and sit behind another 5 star recruit that can be a senior, right? And I think the SEC formula was, hey, we got the best recruits, we're going to train them our way, and our backup's going to be better than your starters, right? Now that everybody's getting paid, these 5 star recruits are, they not going to other conferences as wide as it is, but what they're doing is they go into somewhere where they can play now and getting paid millions of dollars and blah blah blah. And my only concern is that the SEC have not adapted to that just yet. Now, will the SEC figure it out? I think the SEC knows now that hey, we got to buy in and start hitting the portals just as hard as like a Colorado or just as hard as a Ohio State or just as hard as a Penn State or just as high as any Big Ten or other conference out there, because I think that's one thing that the SEC is lacking of is that they still go after these 5 star recruits because it looks better on paper instead of going after everybody that like seniors and juniors that's in the transfer portal, right? That brings me up to the losses that you see that the SEC took this weekend is because most of them teams that they lost to, like a Illinois, like a Illinois, what Navy and Michigan. Michigan, I don't know if you know this, but Michigan backup quarterback number 10, I don't even know his name. He's in the transfer portal and he played in the bowl game, right? So basically what I'm saying is that most of them seniors and juniors on them teams are not going to be first round draft picks. They still trying to build they draft stock, so that's why they play in these bowl games. And while the SEC is struggling to keep their seniors on the field, they playing against you know, unexperienced, true freshmen versus, experienced juniors and seniors that's eventually third and fourth round picks and makes a big disadvantage for the SEC. So that's on the SEC for not figuring out the NIL era, but also congrats on, the other programs for keeping a third round, fourth round picks on the field that's been having 4 years of experience versus true freshmen. You're going to win that battle all day long. So
Yeah, we're gonna keep moving forward since we have some more games to discuss. But what I will say is, it's not that the SEC is having a hard time adjusting to the NIL. No, the SEC has been known for the NIL before the NIL was a thing. They've always paid their players. The issue that you find is that it's just more competitive because now everyone can do it because now it's just an actual thing. So to your point, you're right. Instead of having an overloaded team with all these 4 and 5 stars, because you can pay those guys down in the SEC, now they're just going everywhere. But one thing I will point out that the SEC, what I really think the SEC is struggling with is that it comes down to culture. And I think that's the biggest drop off with all of these transfers and everything like that is that for a head coach, your turnaround is so crazy. How do you maintain that culture of your team? The team, even when it comes to opt outs and everything like that, part of the reason Michigan won is that Michigan is doing a great job of maintaining their culture. Even for that backup QB, I believe it's Orgy, number 10. Um, he even stayed for that game and then left, right? That speaks more on the culture and how Michigan are bringing these players up than it does to just the best interest of that player. So for the SEC, I think that's something that's the real area they need to get better at is that, yes, you're buying and selling these kids because that's how the NIL market is now. But once you have these kids, you still have to find a way to build some type of culture. And that's where it pays off when it comes to games like this, where you just don't have a bunch of people just opting out or demanding pay raises and everything like that, or else they're just like, I'm bouncing. But
Before we move on, my
okay.
only pushback to that is I don't think it's the culture in the SEC. I think it's the coaching. When you got 5-star recruits that's getting coached hard by Kirby Smart,
Mm-hmm.
by Dan Lennon, or by I can't think of the head coach name, Lane Kiffin from
Yeah.
Ole Miss. They coach their players so difficult and so tough to where if you got a 5-star recruit, all he got to do is say, "Hey, bro, I'm not gonna let you talk to me like that or threaten me with my playing time. I'm just going to pack my shit up and I'm just going to go to another school."
Right.
That's the issue with SEC and this NIL era is that that's why the GOAT left. That is why he left from Alabama, because he hold his players accountable. And now that he can't hold his players accountable no more due to NIL era, I think that's the reason why he wanted to get out of it, because the moment you try to coach a player difficult, all you got to do is say, "Bro, I don't need your 8 million. I can get it over here to a coach that's going to let me do what I want to do."
Right.
I think that's the biggest issue, is that I think that you got so many GOAT coaches in the SEC. Like, you cannot tell me there's one bad head coach in the SEC, or I'm going to just throw it in Big Ten. Like, I don't think it's a lot of bad coaches. I think it's a lot of tough ass coaches out there. And I think nowadays with the players is that they get coached tough, they can go get the money somewhere else. And I think SEC haven't figured that out yet. So
Yeah, and we can continue that thought once we get towards the end. But for the next game here, South Carolina versus Illinois. South Carolina, this one's a big one because South Carolina, made it known early on that like they're going to try and actually win this game, and that was a big point of the coach. And a lot of players were like, "Yeah, I'm going to stay just to play this game," and they still went out and lost. So the score: South Carolina scored 17, and then they lost to Illinois, who scored 21 points. Let me get your thoughts on that real quick.
mhm.
Now, what do you think about South Carolina losing to Illinois? Because again, South Carolina was another team to where it's like they had probable cause to actually be in the playoffs, and a lot of people felt like they were snubbed, especially going over their resume and the teams that they had to face. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was the total opposite of what you said. I don't think that South Carolina came out as if they wanted to win the game. I think Illinois came out timid as if they had no shot. But when I think what happened is that South Carolina never had interest in the game, and when Illinois figured out they can play with them, Illinois took advantage and they beat South Carolina.
Um,
I think that's exactly what happened. I didn't. I think that South Carolina went out thinking like, oh, Illinois, cool. Illinois has been a solid team the whole year. If you watched Illinois, that was a sneaky team that can beat you if you didn't bring your A game. I think South Carolina went out like, hey, this is an Illinois team that's whatever, right? I mean, we can just walk over them like as if they was a SMU or something. And Illinois realized they can play with them and they beat them. I legit think that happened. I think that's legit what happened. I seriously do.
yeah, I don't really agree. I think in terms of the production, yeah, that's a fair argument. I just from everything they were saying beforehand, they definitely gave off the vibe that they were actually going to try to win that game. They weren't just going to walk in there and just be happy to be there. But
Same thing with Dion. Dion came out, hey, my player's playing. You saw what BYU did. You know what I mean? Like, I just think like the players, like, I think they just lose. I think bowl games it's like meaningless because like nobody wants to be competitive in them no more until like unless it's like schools like a Navy or Illinois or something like that to where like, hey, this is my Super Bowl. Like this is what we play for. We play for to win a bowl game. So
yeah, speaking of Navy, this one's actually my favorite one here. Let's talk about Navy versus Oklahoma
uh huh.
here. This one's one of my favorite for a couple of reasons. First of all, shout out to the United States Naval Forces right there. Appreciate your service, absolutely. And I love this because Navy obviously runs the triple
They
option
don't throw the
offense,
football. Yep.
right? Exactly, the old 1940s offense right there. And then Oklahoma, this one's even better because I vividly remember fighting with people in our comments discussing Oklahoma because suddenly, because Oklahoma beat Alabama, they were a good team. And
Mhm.
also, suddenly, because Oklahoma's in the SEC, now they're a good 6-6 team.
Yep.
Right. So I love this. I love that this happened in every way. So I want to get your thoughts before I put my thoughts into this. What do you think about Navy beating Oklahoma here?
Um, what I think is that was a piss poor performance from Oklahoma. Period. Um, Shout out to Navy, great win. I respect anybody that can run the football and do it efficiently. I have no, you know what I mean. I mean, that quarterback from Navy played lights out. I mean, he just played his best ball game ever, and that's what I mean about that's that team Super Bowl. When it's their Super Bowl, you're gonna get their best punch. And shout out to Navy. I mean, they swung their best punch and they connected. Hey, Oklahoma, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, there's so much stuff I like about this. I don't think there's a guy that's 300 pounds on Navy, just on how the armed services work
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah. You got to be a
height
weight
limit.
limit.
Yep, everything like that. So everything about this is perfect because the Oklahoma loss was probably one of the biggest death nails in your whole SEC argument, especially when you were trying to argue to put Bama in, outside of Bama just flat out losing. So, shout out to Navy. Love those guys. I gotta go to a game out there one of those days just to give them my support. And then the last one, which is the most important one,
Yep. Go ahead.
let's talk about this playoff game here. Let's talk about Georgia versus Notre Dame.
Uh huh.
So a lot to say on this. I want to make sure I see you don't have your paperwork. Don't worry, I can show you this real quick.
Yep.
You can go ahead and look at this real quick over here. So big thing here is SEC school. This is the team actually Georgia that you had winning it all.
Yeah, I had Georgia winning
Yeah,
it
you
all.
had Georgia winning it all. And they ended up scoring 10 points.
Yep.
10 points against a team that's actually not in the conference. It's an independent
Yep.
conference that
Yep.
they have. Yep. And then you had Notre Dame, who ended up scoring 23, so a very healthy lead,
Uh huh.
for sure. What else? I wrote this note down here because I thought this was important that Riley Leonard won 23-10 while throwing for 90 passing
Yep.
yards,
Okay.
right?
Uh huh.
So when I see that one particularly, when I see someone throw 90 passing yards and win, what that speaks to me is that they had a very good run game against you guys.
No.
And I
No.
think
No.
I think so, cause
No.
and it's funny because the pride and joy of Georgia is we talk about the dogs,
Yep.
those dogs
Yep.
up front, the D line and the O
Yep.
line, right? And when I watched that game, and now I'm looking at the stats, it's very clear to me that they got dominated.
Yep.
They got dominated, especially on the
They didn't get
defense.
dominated, but I'm listening.
Um, Definitely on that front seven, that wasn't the same front seven that I thought I would see go out there and perform. There's a lot of key notes there. Riley Leonard looked like Josh Allen out there for some reason, running the ball, doing QB counter against you guys. And then for your O line was surprisingly bad.
The left tackle was bad, not the O line.
Ah,
The left tackle was terrible. Everybody else played a decent game. But let's talk about the 23 points really quick because you
sure,
brought that up.
sure. Let's
So,
get your thoughts.
how many points was given to Notre Dame by Georgia? Like given, if you could think, like play you play football, so you
Mhm.
know what I mean by given. As if Georgia offense set up Notre Dame's offense to score points. How many points legitimately was given up to where Notre Dame had access to source? It's kind of like Georgia and Alabama kind of was in the same. They played like the same. They made the same mistakes basically.
Yeah,
So I can name off the first touchdown that Leonard threw was the RPO read. If you go back and look at that, I think it was a strip sack because the left tackle was just god awful. Didn't even touch the guy. He just beat him off the edge. Riley Leonard got the ball at maybe the 15-yard line and threw a touchdown pass off the first play. Right. Let's talk about how many plays got called back from Georgia. We had the bomb call back from the sideline penalty. We also had another bomb call back from illegal formation. So that's 14 points scratched off the board. The second string didn't play bad, in my opinion, but they didn't have enough firepower and enough explosive plays to win the game. So, with that being said, is that Notre Dame is really not a good team. I totally agree with you when you said that Notre Dame is not a good team. This Notre Dame Penn State game is going to be like watching two eggs in an og. Um, Notre Dame is not a good team. They don't have an explosive offense, and Riley Leonard will not be able to get them over the hump versus them two teams that's at the top, right? Um, that's just kind of like what happened. They was given the ball game by Georgia mistakes.
So I will make it clear, I will never defend Riley Leonard for the QB play that I've seen him make.
Or Allen from Penn State.
Yeah,
His
or
QB just
Drew
as bad.
Aller
Yeah.
either. So both. Let me be clear. Both the teams, they have good wins in the playoffs, and they deserve to
Yes,
be there,
yes.
right? Like we can both agree that. However,
Wait,
and part of
wait.
what?
The playoffs wins make them deserving to be in the playoff. Yes. They SOS do not. I want to make that clear of where I stand. I stand strictly on SOS. If you go back and look at outside of Penn State SOS is decent. But Notre Dame, my only issue with Notre Dame was SOS. But after the playoff wins, it makes them look more deserving to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and there's a conversation to be had. We're not going to have that again here, but obviously there's SOS, but also people discuss SOR, and then of course there's other components, and really just the fact that on the SEC side, a lot of those teams were just not deserving to really bounce
Uh-huh.
some of these other teams out of the playoff picture. But in sticking with the Notre Dame Georgia, my synopsis of it is actually pretty similar to yours. To where, yes, that is a real thing. I think that QB played way better than people will ever give him credit for.
Yes, he played
Yeah,
really well. He
he
played
actually
really
played
well.
a great game, and you're right. There's a couple plays that they've literally left out on the field. I mean, there's a wide open touchdown that their receiver just blatantly dropped the
Dropped.
ball. Yeah,
Oh my
it's a wide
goodness.
open
Yes.
touchdown. That would
Forgot
have made
about
it.
that one.
Yeah, and that would have made it a game. Absolutely. Um, One thing that you noted that I do agree with is when you just said the word firepower. I think that's very interesting, a very big distinction for what I'm seeing from these SEC teams is that in the past, that firepower argument, like that was a real thing to where they were just bigger, better, stronger talent and everything, right? And nowadays, when you look at these SEC teams, it's that it's way more of an even match against teams from other conferences than you would have seen before.
Uh-huh.
Again, when we talk about the O line play, one thing that's never ever came out of my mouth is that the Georgia O line played bad. Like that's something I never thought would happen. Just because again, that was their slogan. That's what they're known for. Same thing with the Georgia D line. Georgia D line, it's been known all those guys going in the first round or going into the NFL and the linebacking core too is always great. So to see those two sides of the ball at times get manhandled, especially to a Notre Dame, is very strange. I remember going into that game and I said, hey, listen, if Notre Dame can run the ball, they can win the game. However, you look back at Notre Dame's history, that's always been their issue. They go up against the SEC team, they can't run the ball ever. And if they can't run the ball, they ain't gonna win. This is the first time I've ever seen them effectively run the ball. It wasn't even that good, but it was way better than what they've ever done before against SEC teams. So it's an interesting trend that you see going forward when it comes to talent and firepower, what we like to say, to where it's like it seems like the rest of the conferences are finally catching up to the SEC.
Yes, so Notre Dame history has always been recruiting bigger guys. And they issue back in the past is that they didn't have the speed to keep up with other teams. They always had bigger players as far as O-line, DBs. Everybody on their defense is like over 6 foot tall. Like they don't have no short players nowhere on the field at all. Like here's the thing. Like, I think what's the SEC problem is that Big Ten has always been known for O linemen, big O linemen. Don't matter every team in the Big Ten, their offense and D line is stacked. Right outside of like Ohio State and Penn State had great skilled players also. SEC has been just strictly, hey, we're gonna man up, play defense. Our players better than y'all's. Offense, same thing. We got bigger, we got faster, better players, skill wise. We just gonna my guy versus your guy. We're better, right? Conference Pac-12. We like Pac-12 back when the Pac-12, Oregon, Cal. You see, they always been finesse. Hey, we're gonna out scheme y'all. We're gonna throw the shit out of the ball. We're gonna air you out. We're gonna scheme you up, right? All these conferences have have they standard. They have their identity, right? what really happened to me, what's the SEC issue is more of the expansion of the teams, right? And the reason why I say that is because um, when these other teams like the Pac-12, most of the Pac-12 teams went to the Big Ten, right? And I think what these other conferences are looking and what these other conferences are did is that these other coaches are getting smarter with their schemes, right? So like the Big Ten took some scheme points from the Pac-12, then they also recruited like the SEC, and that's what they adopted. While the SEC has stayed with the same identity they had since the SEC started. Hey, our guys is better than y'all's. And that's what I mean by they haven't caught up with the NIL errors because, hey, like everybody can get the talent you can. Now you got to literally just out recruit and outclass these other conferences to get back to the SEC. And, it showed a little bit that the NIL is affecting with the SEC. So,
Right. Yeah. And then as we close this out, I have one last question for you because I want to get your thoughts on
yep.
this. Is that, and I've seen this as a growing trend. So I'm interested in your take on this. Is that do you believe that these SEC coaches in particular are just flat out getting out coached?
Yes. Out coach and out recruited right now. I really do. I believe it. This year
Yep.
showed it. This year showed it that they getting out coached and out recruited. Outside of, like I said, Kirby Smart. You saw what he just did with that second string. He almost just pulled that off. Kirby Smart to me, Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football. He's the best. Is nobody better than Kirby. Kirby Smart will be back. He will that is somebody that you could say Georgia would be in the picture every single year, no matter what. I don't care I don't care what it is.
Right.
Kirby Smart is the best coach. And yes, these coaches are being out coached and out recruited. And I think a lot of coaches is about to get exposed. One, I think the first coach, but his contract, he got a death contract, and it's coming from your favorite football team, LSU. What's his name?
Oh,
Uh,
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly. I think he's so overrated as a coach, and I think it's the same story with every year with Brian Kelly. Even when he was at Notre Dame, he win 9 to 10 football games, and he can't finish it off at the end. There's always something in Brian Kelly's way to where he can't win the big game. You know what I mean? And that's a coach that's always getting out, out coached and out recruited. But also Brian Kelly, he's a different type of coach. If you watch him, holy crap. I see why it's hard for him to get recruits. You know what I mean? Like nobody want to deal with that every day, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I think it is a growing trend. It's interesting to see. And my thoughts when I started that was looking at that Alabama Michigan game because obviously DeBoer going in there, we were thinking of him as like an elite strategist, offensive mind, and everything like that. And they got shut down by Michigan, right? But then when you look at the Michigan DC was the former Giants defensive coordinator, right? I think
so
it's
you can't scheme nobody up.
I think his name's Winkle or something like that. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, like so I look at that, I'm like, okay, I mean, he's the real deal. Like he'll know how to scheme people up and everything. And I really feel like that's what happened with Alabama because Michigan had a lot of people that left and went to the draft and everything like that. But he was able to scheme up the Boers offense pretty
No,
well
for
and
sure, yeah.
organize those
A lot
guys.
of, a lot of, a lot of. I don't want to discredit Michigan at all. They played a good football game,
Mhm.
and like I said, they get out coached and out recruited because what have been Alabama formula through the Nick Saban time, right? Nick Saban always had the better players, and it was always, hey, my Joe is better than your Joe. We're going to play man to man, and we're going to just shut that shit down, right?
Yep.
That's always been his formula. Like Coach Saban was man to man. I'm going to blitz the shit out of you. My Joe's better than yours. Get open, right? With DeBoer, like you said, he came from the Pac-12. He's a strategist. He's going to scheme you. He's going to do this. Well, when you try to scheme and your players is still not, performing as the best players on the field, that's never been Alabama formula was to over scheme. They was just, hey, we're going to run the ball, play action. My guy's going to win one-on-one. Stop it. Right. And that shows his first year in the SEC, he got a wake up call. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
they got
100%.
to get back to the drawing board.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. One more thing.
Go ahead.
Because I know one of our commenters would love for you to answer this question.
Uh-huh.
Everyone wants to know:
Mm-hmm.
do you believe that the SEC is still better than the Big Ten this year?
Yes, 1,000%.
You still believe that?
Yes, Texas is going to be okay. So here's my predictions. This is why I said it. Texas is going to beat Ohio State this week, and the reason why I say this is because I know Ohio State looked like the best team since 20 2019. No, 2011 Bama. I know that Ohio State looked better than the 2011 Bama team. Like people legit think this is the best team since sliced bread, right? But if you also looked at Ohio State, is that we also got to come back to reality. Ohio State always plays, back to back great games, and then they come out and really struggle to where they almost about to lose to another team that's like in competitive, right? And I just think that with Texas defense has been insanely good the entire year. They have the best red zone defense in college football. And I seriously and truly believe that Texas defense is going to overwhelm Ohio State if I'm saying what's his last name, quarterback for Texas?
Ewers.
Ears. He don't even have year. Listen to me, Ears. Let me talk to you. You do not have to play the best game to beat Ohio State. You don't have to play god awful. I mean, God, like just normal. Like if you play slightly below average, you will win this game by 6 points. Listen to me. Do not turn over the ball, and your defense will carry you to the finish line. Make the easy throws, and you can beat this Ohio State team. You have the best corner in the nation on this Texas team, award winner, best corner in the nation. You have a great defense, and you have linebackers that can fly. Right? I know this Arkansas State looked like a fluke because
Arizona State.
Arizona State. I'm sorry. I noticed Arizona State looked like a fluke because they had a comeback, but that's what happens when you give a team momentum. Momentum is a big thing in college football, and it really matters if a team got momentum. You're not going to be able to slow them down. Control the game, play decent, just put up 24 points, and you can win this game versus Ohio State. Now, with that being said, is Texas is my pick for the Ohio State Texas game, and then for Notre Dame, Penn State, it comes to the fact of who do I hate worse, like more? Who do I hate more, Penn State or Notre Dame? I think I hate Penn State more than Notre Dame, so I'm gonna go Notre Dame by a landslide by 2 points.
All right. All right. Well, there you have it. Well, I think we can call it right here. So, want to appreciate you guys for tuning into another video here. Again, go ahead, subscribe if you haven't already. Comment down below. What do you guys think about the SEC? Do you think it's over for the SEC? You still think they'll have a comeback next year? Let us know your thoughts down below. But other than that, I think we're good here.
Yep, yep.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys in the next one.